Before the dead were summoned, before the woman screamed, before the king collapsed on the ground, there was a silence so complete, it felt like abandonment, not punishment, not wrath, not angry, not loud. Absence and silence from God is more frightening than judgment. This is not merely the story of a witch. It is the story of a world where God withdraws and something else waits in the dark to answer. This is the story of Saul, and the night he crossed a boundary no living king was ever meant to cross. In the ancient world, the dead were never far away. They were buried beneath homes, invoked in whispers, consulted in secret. Across Mesopotamia, Canaan, Egypt, and Assyria, necromancy was not superstition. It was a system. Ritual pits were dug, blood was poured into the earth. Spirits were believed to rise through cracks between worlds. The dead were thought to know the future because they stood closer to the gods, and Israel knew this, which is why Israel was forbidden from ever doing it. Do not consult the dead, the law warned. Do not seek mediums or spiritists, not because they were powerless, but because they were real and dangerous. Saul knew this law. He enforced it. Mediums were hunted, necromancers driven underground, the voices beneath the earth silenced, at least publicly. But Saul's downfall began long before Endor. It began the day God stopped answering him. No dreams, no visions, no prophets. In ancient Israel, silence meant judgment. If God did not speak, it meant the covenant was fractured, and Saul knew why. He remembered Samuel, the prophet who anointed him, the prophet who rebuked him, the prophet who pronounced his rejection. And now Samuel was dead, buried in Ramah, beyond reach. Or so Saul thought. The Philistines gathered again. Their war camp stretched like a dark sea. Chariots, infantry, iron weapons Israel could not match. And Saul trembled. The text says it plainly. His heart shook greatly. So he sought God, and God did not answer. This is the moment the story turns dark. Because in ancient belief, if a god did not answer from above, one could seek knowledge from below. So Saul asked the forbidden question, "Is there still a medium left in the land?" They whispered her name. Endor, a village near Mount Tabor, a place associated in later Jewish tradition with caves and spirit pits. The rabbis would later say, Endor was chosen because the boundary between worlds was thin there. Saul disguised himself. The king stripped himself of identity. In Jewish commentary, this detail matters deeply. A king without garments is a king without authority. Saul walked into Endor, already dethroned in heaven. The woman hesitated. She knew the danger. But Saul swore an oath by the very God he was betraying. And this is where ancient necromancy enters fully. The ritual began. In Near Eastern texts, summoning the dead involved darkness, silence, a pit or opening in the earth, whispered incantations, sometimes blood. The goal was not possession, it was disturbance to pull the dead upward, against their rest. And then the woman screamed. This detail haunted Jewish interpreters. Why would a practiced medium scream? Because this was not her power. The Talmud records a chilling tradition. Normally, spirits rise feet first, but Samuel rose upright, which meant this was no lesser spirit. This was a prophet, and prophets do not answer witches. I see a God ascending from the earth, she cried. The Hebrew word is Elohim, not ghost, not shade, a divine being. This terrified her, because she had not summoned a servant. She had disturbed authority. Saul asked, trembling, "What do you see?" And when Samuel appeared, the text says Saul bowed with his face to the ground. The king bows to the dead prophet. The hierarchy is restored. Too late. Samuel's words are not gentle. Why have you disturbed me? In Jewish tradition, this question cuts deep. Samuel is not asleep. He is at rest. and Saul has torn him back. Saul confesses everything. I am in distress. God has departed from me. He answers me no more. Samuel's response is devastating. Why ask me if the Lord has turned from you? In other words, why seek the dead when you rejected the living God? Then comes the sentence, tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The rabbis argued over this line for centuries. Some said Samuel meant death. Others said Samuel meant judgment. But one interpretation is the darkest. Samuel was telling Saul he would join the realm of the dead, but not in peace. The woman watched the king collapse. Saul fell full length on the ground. No strength, no dignity. In ancient Near Eastern belief, to fall before a medium was to submit to the underworld. The king of Israel lay broken at the feet of forbidden knowledge. The woman fed him. This detail is often overlooked, but it matters. In necromantic rites, food restored strength after spirit contact. Saul eats before returning to the night. The next day, everything Samuel said happened. The Philistines slaughtered Israel. Saul's sons died, and Saul, wounded and terrified, fell on his own sword. Jewish tradition notes the symmetry. Saul once spared what God told him to destroy. Now he destroys himself. So what really happened at Endor? The Bible does not explain, and that silence is intentional. Some Jewish commentators say God allowed Samuel to appear to seal Saul's judgment. Others say Samuel's spirit was dragged up against its will as punishment for Saul. Others whisper God used forbidden means to speak one final truth. But everyone agrees on this. Saul did not find comfort. He found confirmation. Necromancy did not give him hope. It gave him certainty. The Witch of Endor is not a story about magic. It is a story about impatience, about refusing to wait when God is quiet. Because in the ancient world, the dead always answered faster than God, and they always told the truth too late. The lesson is not, do not seek mediums. It is deeper. When God withdraws his voice, do not assume the silence is empty. Something else is always willing to speak. Saul's tragedy was not Endor. Endor was the result. His tragedy was choosing control over obedience, certainty over faith. And so the story ends where it began, with silence. Samuel returns to rest. The woman returns to shadow. The king returns to dust. And God remains unanswered. Because when heaven closes its mouth, the earth opens its grave. And not every voice that rises should ever be heard. Like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Share this video.